The U.S. population is expected to increase by 90 million in the next 30 years, according to the book Growing a Better America, Smart, Strong, Sustainable. Now is the time for the United States to plan for that growth. The book's author, Chuck Leavell, is a conservationist, co-founder of the Mother Nature Network, a tree farm owner, and a noted rock musician for many years. He's toured with Eric Clapton, the Rolling Stones, and George Harrison, among others. Chuck Leavell, welcome to Current State.
Oh, so great to be with you. Thanks for the invitation.
It's a real kick to talk with you. Where did this passion for the environment and for tree farming in particular, how did that take shape in your life?
Oh, my goodness. Well, it's a bit of a story, but, I'm a child of the 60s, and along with the cultural revolution that went on during those years, certainly environmentalism was a part of it. And then I suppose it laid somewhat dormant in me until I met my wife, whose family has been connected to the land for generations as farmers, tending cattle, tending forest land and row crops and so forth. So I was kind of reawakened, and that would have been in the mid-'70s. And then in 1981, her grandmother passed on, leaving her about 1,000 acres of land, and it became our responsibility to carry on this heritage of stewardship of the land, so that's what we've been trying to do ever since.
And it sounds like you may not have grown up in the city.
Well,
is that possible, or did you?
Actually, my family are from Alabama. We lived in Birmingham. We lived in Montgomery for a time, and we did live in the country when we lived in Montgomery. So I got a little taste of it for a couple of years there as a young person, and absolutely loved it. I remember how bright the stars were at night. You had no light pollution where we lived, and it was just an extraordinary thing. My sister and I playing in the creek, down the hill. We had horses. We had a garden that was hand plowed, and so I did get a taste of it at a young age, and then we moved to Tuscaloosa, where I spent most of my childhood, and that's where I began the musical interest.
There is no more greater blessing, in my view, than growing up in an uncluttered, natural environment where you're close to the country, and that I tell you that's left an indelible impression on my life, and it sounds like it's left an indelible impression on yours as well. Tell our listeners how a tree farm works exactly.
Right. Well, there's different kinds of tree farms that we could talk about, but what we do, and by the way, we're in central Georgia, the middle Georgia area, as we call it, and we grow mostly southern yellow pine, species of pine that include longleaf pine, shortleaf, lots of loblolly pine and slash pine. This is long-term sustainable forest management. That's what we do. We grow these trees eventually for production. When people ask me about the resource of wood, I like to point out that this resource gives us some materials to build our homes and schools and churches, to make books and magazines and newspapers. It's a natural and organic, and most importantly, it's a renewable resource. And of course, it does a lot of other things. It cleans our air, it cleans our water, it provides home and shelter to all manner of wildlife. And now we're looking at biomass for energy production as a renewable energy resource. So I think it's our most important resource that we have in this country.
We're talking with Chuck Leavell. It's not uncommon for musicians to write books, but it's a lot less common for a musician to write a book about something other than music. Tell us about the book and what motivated you to write a whole book about this passion.
Well, Growing a Better America, the book is really, the theme is smart growth. The fact that when I wrote the book, which was now about a year and a half ago, we had 310 million people in the country, and now we're bordering on 313 just in that short period of time. And we had, 2011, I believe it was, saw the birth of the 7 billionth person on the planet.
Wow.
And so, when you think about these things, it just constitutes a tremendous amount of pressure on our natural resources. And so we're not going to stop this growth. I mean, we can't just push a button and say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. But what we have to do is address how we're going to grow. And that's what the theme of the book is all about. Everything from clean, green, renewable energy sources to community building, community architecture, if you will, to trying to use less fossil fuels and looking at new technologies and so forth.
Great. One of the concepts in your book is smart communities. Can you? What is how does a smart community work, Chuck?
Well, there's a number of components to that. I mean, first of all, let's talk about having your offices and your schools and the other entities, your church or whatever it might be, neighborhoods. Let's try to make them walkable, bikeable, where you have healthy lifestyles. You're not having to use vehicles so much, or certainly if you do, let's look at the best possible public transportation options that might be available. Certainly in the buildings themselves, we need to make sure that they're built well, that they're insulated well, that they're not wasting energy. Again, if you live in an area where solar would be a good option, look at solar. Those of us that have visited Europe have seen the many wind farms that exist over there that are helping to create renewable energy, and also they're very big on biomass, which I mentioned earlier. But these are the types of components to a smart community that we need to think about. And it's not just about building new communities in that way, but oftentimes you can find areas of cities in our country that you can renovate and use those components and use them wisely and reduce the energy usage and again, work towards a healthier lifestyle.
These topics are all part of the national conversation to one extent or the other. Chuck, are you more encouraged or more discouraged by the future as far as creating these smart communities and so forth?
Well, I'm an optimist, so I'm encouraged, but I tell you, it's frustrating to see how slowly we're moving towards these things. This country has a lot to address right now, and as we all know, the conversation has been about financial matters, it's been about gun control, it's been about, the topics of the day, and this is what is on the agenda for our lawmakers. But, eventually our president talked about the environment in his inaugural address. I have to believe that this subject matter is going to come around hopefully sooner rather than later, but it's obvious to me that these other matters are going to take precedence at least for the next few months. Hopefully we can get through these issues as quickly as possible and then begin to address our environmental challenges.
You are about to go out on tour again with the Rolling Stones as part of the 50 and Counting tour. You have become the go-to guy as far as keyboard playing goes for for years now. You've been the guy for the Rolling Stones, the Allman Brothers, Eric Clapton, George Harrison. How does it feel to be in that? You're a member of a very small club, it would seem to me. That must feel really special.
Oh, man, I have been so blessed in my career. And, you mentioned the fact that I've been able to work with a lot of different artists, and that's really been the true joy of my career. I mean, to have success with one artist or as a solo artist or whatever would be, a good thing. But it's just been fascinating for me to work with the Stones now for 30 years for me. But in between tours, the Stones are not the kind of band that work on a constant basis, so there'll be 2 to 5 year periods where there's no activity, and that allows me to, work with other artists. And you mentioned Eric Clapton. I had a couple of years with Eric, did the Unplugged record with him and some other records and a couple of world tours with him. George Harrison, who was an incredible individual. I mean, my heavens, a Beatle, but also a great solo artist and just a fantastic humanitarian. And recently with John Mayer, I worked on John's most recent record, which is called Born and Raised. Very proud to be on that record. So, it's just been a joyous career for me, and I have been blessed. Well,
I want your life when you're done with it, okay? Can I just put it that way? Chuck Leavell. Chuck Leavell is a tree farmer, an author, and a noted musician. He's the author of Growing a Better America, Smart, Strong, Sustainable, and he is coming to East Lansing. He'll be at the School of Natural Resources Wednesday morning at 11:30. Chuck Leavell, best of luck. Thank you.
Wonderful to be with you. Thanks so much.